There's a city, described in ancient texts with surprising detail, and today, parts of it may be sitting underwater. Not rumored. Not imagined. Structures, real, measurable formations, have been detected off the coast of India in a place where those same texts said a city once stood. And that's where this becomes difficult to ignore. Because the city wasn't described vaguely. It was presented as real, a coastal stronghold, active, structured, built with intention. And then, just as clearly, it was said to disappear into the sea. For centuries, that part of the story was treated as symbolic, something meaningful, but not literal. Until modern surveys began to reveal something beneath the water that doesn't behave like random geology. Patterns. Alignment. Shapes that suggest placement rather than formation. And once that happens, the story shifts. Not into proof, but into a question that's harder to dismiss. Because now you're not asking whether the story exists, you're asking whether it was describing something real that hasn't been fully uncovered yet. To understand why this matters, you have to see Dwarka as a functioning place, not a myth. In traditional accounts tied to Krishna, Dwarka wasn't hidden or isolated. It was positioned at the edge of land and sea, a location that immediately gives it purpose. Coastal cities don't exist quietly. They control movement. They connect regions. They influence trade, communication, and power. And Dwarka is consistently described that way, active, organized, structured. Ships arriving. Goods moving. People entering and leaving. This wasn't an imagined paradise, it was a working city. Built deliberately, with boundaries, entry points, and systems that suggest planning rather than coincidence. And there's something else in those descriptions that changes how you hear the story. This wasn't built because it had to be, it was built because it was meant to matter. A place people believed was protected, chosen, significant beyond its location. And when a place carries that kind of meaning, it doesn't fade quietly. It leaves an imprint, historical, cultural, or physical. Which is exactly why the underwater findings matter. Not because they confirm everything, but because they exist in the same place where a detailed account says something once stood. And this is where everything changes. Because the story doesn't end with the city, it ends with the ocean taking it. According to those same accounts, Dwarka didn't decline over time. It wasn't abandoned slowly or destroyed through conflict. It was submerged. Completely. And that kind of disappearance is different. Cities don't just vanish. Not without something forcing them to. When structures are destroyed, there are traces. When they're abandoned, there are layers. But submergence removes visibility entirely. It takes something structured and relocates it into an environment where time, pressure, and movement begin to break it apart. Which means that even if Dwarka existed exactly as described, what remains today wouldn't look like a preserved city. It would look like fragments. Disconnected elements. Pieces that don't immediately form a clear picture. And that's exactly what has been found. Not a complete layout, but enough to suggest human presence. Enough to raise the question. Because once you accept that the ocean changes what survives, the absence of a perfect structure becomes less important. What matters is whether the pieces that exist point back to something larger. So what are we actually looking at? Natural formations that happen to resemble structure, or the remains of something that was never expected to be found again? Because this is where the line becomes difficult to define. The location aligns. The idea of a coastal city aligns. The possibility of submergence aligns. But alignment is not proof. And that leaves two possibilities, both uncomfortable in different ways. One suggests this is coincidence. That the patterns we're seeing are being interpreted through the lens of a story people already know. The other suggests something else entirely, that what's underwater may be connected to a place described long before modern exploration could confirm it. Not fully preserved. Not completely visible. But present enough to raise doubt. And once doubt exists, it doesn't go away easily. Because now you're left with a question that doesn't close. Either this is a remarkable coincidence, or we're looking at the remains of something we weren't supposed to find. Some places aren't lost. They're just no longer where we expect them to be. And if this made you question what's real, you're exactly where you should be. Join us next time. Tilt and chill. Stay curious.